In this video we are going to take a look at the chapter approved Munitorum Field Manual 2022, which went up for pre-order last Saturday and will be officially released on the 29th of January. First, we will start with a quick look at what this chapter approved release actually is, then we will go through the Space Marine changes, including the Deathwatch datasheets. Furthermore, we will then look at the impact of these changes on the Deathwatch army. Lastly, there will be a quick wrap-up of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
The 2022 edition of Chapter Approved contains the Grand Tournament Mission Pack and the Munitorum Field Manual. While the Mission Pack will primarily focus on improving missions and secondary objectives, the Munitorum Field Manual contains the latest points values for all the units. These changes are considered to be mandatory and will replace the values of previously released codexes, supplements, as well as the quarterly balanced data slate. What makes this perhaps a bit more confusing this time is not only the addition of the mentioned quarterly balanced data slate, but also the delayed codex release schedule. Depending on what army you are playing, it might as well be that your freshly released codex is already outdated at this point. Say for instance, if you're playing Adeptus Custodes. But anyway, in this video we will focus on the Munitorum Field Manual and the points changes for Space Marines and Deathwatch only. While the book has not officially been released yet, the point values have already found their way onto the internet at this point. Should anything further change that is relevant to the Deathwatch, I will leave a comment below. First of all, the official preview on Warhammer Community kind of hinted at what direction these point changes might be going. Both the Stormspeeder as well as the Gladiator variants received yet another points decrease. Combined with a surprise points drop on the Corvus Blackstar and some other Space Marine flyers, it appeared like the struggling Space Marine vehicles were about to get a much needed boost in 9th edition. On the other hand, with previewed points increases to the ever popular Primaris Chaplain on bike, as well as the relic contenter equipped with wall kites, we also knew that a few overperformers were going to have a rough awakening. But overall, I would say that I was hopeful that Space Marines in general would see mostly points decreases, given their mediocre win rates as a faction overall these past months, as well as the recent codex creep affecting other factions. So, did my optimism over the preview turn out to be true? For the Deathwatch datasheets, it was certainly a big disappointment to find out that it was in fact only the previewed Corvus Blackstar that would get any points changes. Now, getting a 15 points reduction is something any Deathwatch player will certainly take, especially when considering the rest of the changes, to which I will get later in the video. Personally, I don't think this is what the Corvus Blackstar needed though. Until now, I would have said that the unique flyer of the Deathwatch was in that odd spot where it is a decent unit, but in most lists overshadowed by better performing units, such as the Dreadnoughts. It also really suffers from being unable to transport Primaris and from the anti-tank loadout being super swingy. Personally, what I would have done to the Corvus is giving it the core keyword and Primaris transport capabilities instead. Hell, I would have gone for either of the two and leave it at its old points value. This would have easily boosted it to a solid staple of any Army of Renown list. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, while I won't object to the points drop, I just don't think that it solves much overall. Moving on to the Space Marine changes, which is where things get truly underwhelming. Now, as we have already seen in the preview, Stormspeeders and Gladiators getting yet another points drop, they already did so in Chapter Approved 2021, ties to me a bit into the same problem as just described with the Corvus Blackstar. Space Marine vehicles outside of Dreadnought struggle in 9th edition. I have gone into this in greater detail in a previous video about the Tau Railgun preview. Bottom line here is that it's not just a matter of points, but overall lack of survivability as well as little synergy without the core keyword. while I can see how a gladiator would now make it into an Iron Hands or Black Templars list, I just don't think that they are approaching this from the right direction. The third major points drop is for the Centurion Devastators, going down 15 points, certainly needed as they are horribly overcosted, but very similar to vehicles, they basically removed anything that made them good in 8th edition, so this is unlikely to make them decent in the large majority of Space Marine chapters. And here is where the bad news fully reveals itself. These are the only Space Marine Codex points drops. There is apparently a significant points drop for the Astreas and some chapter specific ones, but for Space Marines overall, it's nerfs from here on. First, we have the popular Redemptor Dreadnought going up 10 points, and then as previously mentioned, the Volkites on the Relic Contemptor also increasing in points. What's important to note here though, is that the weapons are going up 10 points apiece, which means that the popular Twin Volkite loadout is going up a full 20 points. Then last and as seen in the preview, the Primaris Chaplain on bike is also increasing by 10 points. Overall, while it is hard to argue that the Relic Contemptor and the Chaplain bike weren't a little undercosted, the complete absence of any meaningful buffs to a faction that is performing below average strikes me as odd. So, what was missing, at least as far as I'm concerned? Well, first of all, why only further decrease gladiators when there are plenty of other tanks and transports that are struggling to see play? As I said before, I don't think that the Space Marine vehicle problem should entirely be resolved through points, but at least it would be a start. We then have Outriders and Plasma Inceptors, both victims of earlier points changes, which are now a little overcosted for what they can do. I think both of these would need a 5 points drop, bringing Outriders back to what they originally were, and Plasma Inceptors only up by 5 rather than 10. Furthermore, I think the basic Space Marine troops like Intercessors, Heavy Intercessors, even Infiltrators could do with slight decreases. This would in turn also benefit the kill teams of the Deathwatch. But anyway, with this underwhelming number of changes out of the way, what does this mean for the Deathwatch? In order to answer this, we have to consider how the Deathwatch meta looked like these past few months. Most prominent of course were the Dreadnought heavy lists. At its core, there were usually 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts and 2 Relic Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Needless to say that these are getting hit brutally by these changes. 30 extra points for the Redemptors, 40 extra points for the Relic Contemptors, that's a full 70 points increase without any extra benefits. If you were also playing a Primaris Chaplain on bike, which in fairness was not part of the original style of list, this could even go up to 80 points. Brutal. In a previous video, I was already discussing the impact of codex creep and powerful long-range weapons, like for instance the ones from the Tau Codex and their impact on Dreadnought heavy lists, but I think it is fairly safe to say that both this and the huge points increase is about to put the final nail into the Dreadnought meta coffin of the Deathwatch. Which in turn means that we are being left with the only currently viable alternative, which is the army of Renown. How does the situation look for these kinds of lists? Well, due to the very limited amount of datasheets available, there are only 2 changes affecting them, one of which is the 10 points increase of the Primaris Chaplain on bike. With him having shown up in pretty much every competitive Kill Team Strikeforce list so far, it will now be a matter of finding those extra 10 points, for instance by changing around the loadouts of the Proteus kill teams. As a cheaper alternative, a Jump Pack Chaplain could be used for similar effect, but I think that being Primaris, having toughness 5, as well as the auto advance still makes the Primaris Chaplain on bike the more ideal choice, especially when equipping him with the Beacon and Chalice relic. The second relevant change is then of course the Corvus Blackstar. While the iconic flyer of the Deathwatch has not yet made it into the more successful competitive Army of Renown lists played at larger events, the 15 points drop might tempt one or the other player to finally go for it, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't think the points drop is what the flyer needs in the first place. Overall though, I think the Army of Renown as a whole will remain largely unchanged for now. All in all, I think as far as Deathwatch goes, this release of Chapter Approved is mostly bad news, putting a very big, if not final, nail into Dreadnought heavy lists. Combined with the new and upcoming Codex releases, I would at this point advise against investing into the walking coffins up until further notice. Instead, Deathwatch is left with what looks like only a single viable alternative, the new Army of Renown, and this in a current state of 9th edition, where Space Marines are performing below average as it is. Unfortunately, I think we will have to live with this for the time being, as it was also mentioned on the Warhammer community that due to the changes done in this chapter approved release, the balanced data slate that will follow early February will be important, but less far-reaching. Therefore, I expect nothing much to happen for Deathwatch or Space Marines in that particular release. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the upcoming points changes featured in the chapter approved Munitorum Field Manual 2022. For both Deathwatch and Space Marines as a whole, the points changes are largely underwhelming, mostly due to a handful of points decreases for vehicles, with only the 15 points drop on the Corvus Blackstar being relevant for Deathwatch, and of course the points increases to Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Volkites on the Relic Contemptor, as well as the ever popular Primaris Chaplain on bike. These nerfs hit Deathwatch Dreadnought heavy lists particularly bad, with 3 Redemptors and 2 Relic Contemptors with twin Volkites at their core. These lists will go up by at least 70 points. For the Army of Renown, things look a little better, with only the Primaris Chaplain on bike going up by 10 points and the Corvus going down by 15, though the latter has not really been included into competitive lists yet. It seems that for the time being, the Kill Team Strike Force is indeed the way to go for the Deathwatch. While I usually steer clear of any cursing on my channel, GW gets my middle finger for this particular release. So that's it for the upcoming points changes and the Deathwatch. How do these points changes affect your own lists, and what kind of adjustments will you do in the near future? Time to put the Dreadnoughts on the shelf for good? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.